All right, welcome back to the Relatably Rich podcast. Today, I'm not gonna lie, I'm actually really excited to bring to you a baddie, one of my clients, but something that's super new for my channel at least is we're bringing on Lena. We're talking about LinkedIn. I'm super excited. Like I think I told you before we hit record, like I got some questions, so we're gonna be picking her brain. But LinkedIn. Lena has really coined herself as bringing this baddie energy, kind of quitting the corporate. She is a 2 times corporate dropout, which I really want to dive into that side of your story because I feel like so many women listening are either currently still working their corporate alongside their 9 to 5 or just in that transition moving into entrepreneurship. And it really is like a very different mindset. But Lena really brings like the casual side to LinkedIn. So I'm going to hand it over to you. I'll let you introduce yourself, and then we're just going to dive right into how everyone listening can really start to leverage LinkedIn for getting these high paying clients because it's a whole new world out there for LinkedIn. And I'm really excited for this conversation. So I'll hand it off to you, my love.
Thanks, Court. It's so fun to be here. I'm like so glad that we're recording this
I know.
podcast. Yeah, so I'm Lena. So people call me LinkedIn Lena, actually. It's like a bit of a ring to it. So yeah, my whole thing is LinkedIn. I help business owners get clients on LinkedIn, high caliber clients, while still being themselves, not sacrificing their personality, not feeling like they have to dim their light in some sort of a corporate setting. So I got onto LinkedIn by accident in February 2020 when I just wanted to kind of just talk about my entrepreneurial journey to prove that I wasn't just an unemployed, useless entrepreneur. And I ended up actually discovering this whole casual side of LinkedIn because people, even on LinkedIn, have gotten very hungry for authenticity, real stories. They're tired of the whole corporate bullshit, honestly. And that's been an interesting niche that I've uncovered. And turns out a lot of other people want to drop the corporate vibe on LinkedIn. So that is pretty much my thing.
I love this. So I kind of want to just first dive into your story of being like a 2 times corporate dropout, and how that's kind of like allowed you to really not only like show up, because I love the whole authentic side of LinkedIn, but kind of just share with us a little bit like of your story. And when you were in corporate both times, like were you using LinkedIn for like your corporate, or was that something that you kind of just like fell into when you stepped into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, totally. So I worked in corporate probably for 7 years before I decided to quit to be an entrepreneur. So I studied economics at university. I started my corporate career from the bottom in customer service. I got into operations. Then I became a product manager. I was literally like climbing the freaking corporate ladder. I was like, I'm going to be a VP. Like, I want to create an impact and all that stuff. And the big thing for me was I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I'm born to a family of academics. My parents definitely don't understand entrepreneurship. And so I just always used to, even when I was in corporate the first time round, until when I quit in February 2020, I wasn't on social. I had maybe a private Instagram account that I like posted to occasionally, but I was not a social media girly. I always used to look at people who would like give talks or they created products. So they started companies. And I thought, oh, they're a special caliber. They're probably born into an entrepreneurial family or they're like an engineer who invented something. I just assumed that that was not a world for me. And so when I worked my job, I was working my job in the company and like nothing else existed. And it wasn't until I was running an innovation team as a product manager in 2019 where I actually started to do a little bit more kind of customer outreach on LinkedIn because we were testing these new product ideas.
Yeah.
And then that was when I really first started like networking and actually looking outside of the company that I was working at. And I started because I was like being active on LinkedIn during this kind of, entrepreneurial journey during the pandemic. I actually started getting speaking gigs because I was talking about like my journey and everything. So I started kind of discovering this whole social media side.
Yeah.
So I went on this like 19-month entrepreneurial journey and I basically just like I tried everything. I tried like building a SaaS startup. I tried self-publishing a book. I tried building 2 startups with successful founders who have had like successful exits before. I did freelance writing. Like I did everything under the sun, but I just completely burnt out.
Yeah.
And then I went back into corporate for a brief stint before entrepreneurship pulled me back out. So that's kind of like the summary of what happened and like and I was on LinkedIn the whole, like ever since Feb 2020, I've been on LinkedIn the whole time. So when I went back to corporate, I was on LinkedIn.
Right. I love that. So I have so many questions. So I want to just dive into like when you were working in your corporate job and you were using LinkedIn, like how is that different than how you use LinkedIn now? Because I know like you're all about like dropping the professional. And I know a lot of women that you work with, and a lot of women have this idea that LinkedIn is just for the corporate, like the button up, very professional. So how did you go through that transition, or just any advice for people listening that are maybe have left corporate or haven't like touched their LinkedIn, myself included, in like years? Like how did you shift over from being in that corporate mindset and maybe using it in the traditional sense, so to speak, to now being like, fuck all these rules, like I'm going to be authentic, still make money, but really introduce this casual side with how you're connecting and the content that you were posting?
Yeah. So I think the key for me, I mean, the first thing that I'll say is I'm pretty much a baddie in every part of my life. I'm always the one that's like doing something different. I'm pushing the boundaries. I'm like questioning things. People are always staring at me and being like, oh, like, what's that girl doing over there? So I'm not gonna lie, it is part of my personality to literally just like do things differently. So it sort of came a little bit naturally, but I think the thing that was really key for me was when I first got on LinkedIn, I was an entrepreneur. I was not tied to an employer. And so I felt very free. And I think I had a lot of resentment towards the corporate world at the time. So it's kind of my way of rebelling. So again, I wasn't on there being like, like fuck corporate and like everyone who works in corporate, like, never want to talk to them. No, like again, like I think the casual side of LinkedIn, like dropping the corporate vibe is not about like being unprofessional. Like I feel like some people look at me and they're just like, oh, well, like I don't want to post a silly picture on LinkedIn. And it's like, I'm not telling you to post a silly picture. It's just more like find your level of professional, because that's kind of something that I've been like talking a lot of my stories lately is, we have this view of what professional is
Yeah.
on LinkedIn because it's still very much tied to the corporate world, right? But what we need to understand, this is kind of the thing that I teach my clients, is you get to decide what your level of professional is. It doesn't have to be a suit. And it doesn't have to be like you in like a freaking clown suit on LinkedIn. Like it's whatever feels natural to you. Because the goal here is not for us to like be some kind of clowns on LinkedIn. It's just to actually show up as human beings, right? So I think the big thing for me was that, to me, after not having a personal brand in corporate and not doing anything other than my job, this was something so valuable to me that had given me results like speaking gigs, contracting gigs, like opportunities, partnerships, visibility, like an audience. Like I literally started to build an audience that, to me, when I went back to corporate, I was like, it's my brand number one, then the job. Because once you become an entrepreneur, it's kind of like, even when you go back to corporate, like you never really quite fit in. Like I never fit in to begin with. But now that I did entrepreneurship, I was like, wow, like I definitely don't fit in. But I think I was so passionate about my brand and I'd gotten so much good feedback from my audience that it was like, even if I'm going back to corporate, like I'm still going to be me.
Yeah.
Did I button myself up a little bit more? Yes, because there are certain things that I like literally couldn't talk about when I'm working at a company.
Yeah.
And I was working in like a really corporate, by the way, like financial services. Like a lot of people are really corporate in there. So there was an element of like, okay, I still want to be taken seriously within the company.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that was shocking that I want like everyone to hear, especially on this podcast, is we think that it's going to be a negative thing if we have a personal brand and we work at a company. For me, it was the complete opposite. I found that I got so much more respect and interest from my coworkers because they saw me as someone who's like, oh, wow, like she actually does something outside of the job. She shares her opinion, like she creates content, like, oh, like she loves to tell stories. They got to know me through my content. And so when I was working with them, it was like, oh, hey, like I just saw your post, like talking about that. Like, I love how you phrase that. So I got to build those relationships. And honestly, I think a lot of the time I got opportunities in the company because I was viewed as someone who like understands social media. They're out there, they're doing things, they're, like a force or whatever. And so I think one of my messages is like, it's your chance to really build your brand, not just on social media, but even like within the company. And that's what I did.
Yeah, I love that. So, in terms of content, so for people listening that feel like getting on LinkedIn is like going to frickin' Narnia, like how, because I know you have like an incredible presence on, like you have a really big following on TikTok, you have a really engaged following on Instagram. So how does the content differ from Instagram to TikTok to LinkedIn? And just kind of a follow-up question. So for most of us listening, like we're using Instagram to what I like to call hard sell our offers, where it's that very clear call to action, where TikTok is more of like the top of the funnel, the visibility. So where does LinkedIn kind of fit into that? Is it more of the Instagram selling? Is it more of the TikTok community building? Or does it kind of fall somewhere in between?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, in terms of where LinkedIn falls, I would say that it's actually in both buckets. It is a
Okay.
selling platform and it's a community building platform. So, I feel like a lot of people think that LinkedIn is only a selling platform and they're like, oh, like I just connect with my ideal clients, I formally introduce myself, and then I like pitch my services, and like
Yeah.
it's all very like corporate and like suited, right?
Yeah.
Which is not the case. Like you can also build a community of people who actually are excited to see you grow and will mention your name in opportunities, right? So it's not even just about getting sales. It's about like one gig that I got last year, which was super cool, is I was invited to contribute to a curriculum for a product management certificate at King's College London, which is like completely insane to me. But that came in through LinkedIn because I was
Right.
creating content about like product management and someone discovered me and then I got this opportunity, right? So
Wow.
it's definitely like it's both. And in terms of how my LinkedIn content fits in with my omni-channel strategy, so
Yeah.
my LinkedIn content is a little bit more buttoned up just because, again, like just to kind of reiterate what I was talking about before, like being authentic and being on the casual side of LinkedIn, it's not about like, okay, fuck everything. I don't care what people
Right.
think about me. I'm going to go out and, I don't know, post a picture in a bikini. Like, I don't care. It's my
It's not
life.
like
I'm allowed.
TikTok where it's like really
Yeah,
unfiltered and raw.
it's kind of like, you can do that. Like,
Yeah.
there's people doing that on LinkedIn. There's like
Right.
women posting pictures in bikinis. It's like you can do whatever you
Yeah.
want. Again, like whatever you're comfortable with. But like my personal opinion is like it's a little more buttoned up. Like you want to be
Right.
taken a little bit more
More
seriously. So again,
seriously.
you're not dimming your light, but you're just not like screwing yourself over by just being
Yeah.
like, I'm
It's
crazy.
using the platform like how it's, I always say like Instagram, we show up a little different than TikTok, but we're still being authentic. We just have to understand what the platform wants.
Exactly, yeah. And like the content might be a little different too, right? Because you have different audiences. So for example, like even for TikTok, like you said, it's like you'll see me swear on TikTok, you'll see me literally just be like very like all over the place on TikTok. I'm not going to do that on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
but I will say that I am constantly testing the boundaries. So I recently did this like trend on TikTok about like ruffling feathers on LinkedIn, basically.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, is it going to work on LinkedIn? Like, maybe my audience won't
That's
like
it.
it. I posted it anyway, and they loved it. And so, something that I'm really passionate about with omni-channel, especially with respect to LinkedIn, is constantly testing those boundaries. Again,
Boundaries.
like it's not about like, let's now be crazy and see if it works. No, let's just go a little further. Like, can I get a little bit more controversial? Can I show my life a little bit more? And then
Yeah.
seeing how your audience responds. So I think
I
it's like
love
a push
that.
and pull. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that like lends itself so well into like everything your brand is about is like that baddie energy, like pushing the boundaries. So kind of leads me into my next question. When it comes to content, do you find that there's certain lenses of content that work better, whether that's educational, polarizing, storytelling? And for women that are using LinkedIn that maybe feel like it's a little meh, how do you kind of like what would your advice be to help women really stand out and like go against the grain so they're really calling in like those ideal clients? Because like you said, like you've created such an incredible presence because you're not like the typical LinkedIn girl, like you've gone against the boundaries like within reason. But yeah, what would your advice be for women who really need to like stand out? And then are there any pieces of content or lenses of content that you find, across the board with clients that you've worked with do kind of really well?
Yeah, totally. So I think the first thing really to understand about LinkedIn is it's really changing. People are so hungry for just anything real because they're tired of the companies of like, oh, we raised another round, we raised another 3 million, like I made another 300K, like my company won this award. Like no one cares.
Yeah.
They want to hear about the person behind the profile. So they're really interested in like personal stories that are not just like a highlight reel, right? Like I think a
Yeah.
lot of people think that LinkedIn content is clickbait and it's very just like I'm awesome and like a lot of humble bragging. but that's changing a lot where people just want to, and that's why honestly my content, I don't know what's wrong with my eyes. My sunscreen is getting in there. Now it's
The
just like
worst.
all
It's the worst
messed
when it
up.
gets in your mouth too. It's like,
I know. Now it's just like watering, but that's why I had such huge success on LinkedIn in February 2020 because I was literally like, hey guys, like I'm testing these product ideas. They're all failing all over the place. Like, here's exactly what I did wrong. And then literally 3 months in, people are like, can we hire you? And I'm like, what? Like, I'm literally failing. And they're like, yeah, but like, can we hire you?
yeah,
Because people are so hungry for the realness, right? Because when we think about like when we're going to hire someone, we don't want to hire someone who's perfect and they've done it all correctly the whole time. It's the same with LinkedIn. They want to know, like, have you actually struggled in your life? So
yeah,
any kind of like honest lessons, real storytelling, like original thought, that's what's really moving the needle, and entertainment and humor. Again, within reason. But if you can show up as a human being and lightheartedly talk about what you do and actually show your human passion, that's
yeah,
the stuff that I'm seeing is really working on LinkedIn, but also to stand out. And then in terms of like specific lenses of content, I mean, it really is the same across all the other platforms. But I think
right.
the big thing with LinkedIn, which is the case for all other platforms, but people tend to forget about this about LinkedIn because we associate with LinkedIn with like liking our coworkers' posts, like
Yeah,
resharing the occasional company post. But I really just want to encourage people to think about content through the lens of original thought. There's a lot of people who are just like resharing, reposting
sharing
on
it. Yeah,
LinkedIn, and it doesn't work. Like sharing blog posts, like no one wants to do that.
no
That's
one
like what the
cares.
lazy corporates do because their
Right.
boss told them to engage with a company page. So, really, actually creating original content with your stories that actually talks about the human behind the business, right? And
Yeah,
always personal profile, no company profiles. Like the
right.
company page, posting from there. People want to follow people. It's
People.
all about you, your brand, your personal profile, and who you are and how you can showcase that on the
Yeah.
platform.
I love this. And like for me personally, like I've never worked in corporate, but just how you're like explaining LinkedIn, it feels so doable. Like I know a lot of people when like for me when I got on TikTok and I was adding that on top of, having an email list, having a podcast, I was like, it's so daunting. But I feel like just how you explain it, like just showing up as like a human being, like telling those real stories, like sharing the elements of your like it feels so doable, like so simple. It's just like a seamless add-on. And I love how you said it's kind of that perfect blend of TikTok where you are building a community and building a network, but you also can be selling your services on there. So I love how you like again, you explain it in a way where it's just like, oh, like this actually feels really like cat. I'm like, I need to get on LinkedIn now. I know when you like added me, I was like, oh my God, don't look at my like she hasn't been touched or yeah, you update your bio and it's like but nothing happened. So
Yeah.
I love how you're saying, and I feel like as a whole, like the industry with online businesses, like people really are craving like the connection, the authenticity, like the real human. So I know with LinkedIn, and I get these messages all the time, it's like the very cold pitch. Hey, Courtney, glad we connected, blah, 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 blah. So, what's your approach when it comes to connecting with people? Because I know we've almost been conditioned, so to speak, in a good way to not kind of do the pitch, to not go into people's DMs. So how do you kind of approach ideal clients and open up that conversation so they're not getting that like ick vibe? Or do you kind of teach people to open up conversations in the DMs, or is it a little bit like Instagram and TikTok where they find you and they start the conversation?
Yeah. So, I think the first thing that I'll say is a lot of people, there's still a big segment of users on LinkedIn who are doing the very corporate style of pitching, the
Yeah,
formal connection request or whatever, and the long freaking email of like your services and then the call to action, which like no one's going to read.
right.
Which then a lot of people associate with like, oh, that's what I have to do on LinkedIn. And it's like,
Yeah,
absolutely
that's
not.
how
Like,
I get on LinkedIn, and I'm like, no.
yeah, and so I think it's like really hard for me to market because I don't associate with that side of LinkedIn. Like that to me is just like I think anyone who's like been on LinkedIn for a while, like the past like 2 years or something, they know it's like, oh, those are like the corporate LinkedIn, but there's this
Yeah,
like new age of LinkedIn
yeah,
where it's similar to like how we do it on other platforms where like you can open up a DM with someone. Like something that I do often is I monitor who follows me. And then if they fit my ideal client criteria, I go ahead and connect with them.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are a little bit like apprehensive to DM on LinkedIn. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe that's actually why people are apprehensive, because sometimes they don't quite expect that casual approach.
Right.
But like again, I think it's like you just have to have thick skin a little bit with LinkedIn and just kind
Yeah.
of keep going. Like it's almost like the casual side of LinkedIn is still something that is like evolving. So we're still really trailblazing this thing, right? So we're going to run into people who are kind of just like, wait, like this is weird. Like, are they trying to trick me or something? And it's like, no, no, I'm just like a real human being here. So it's very like natural. You like, I encourage my clients to spend a lot of time in the DMs because that's where you really build the relationship.
Yeah.
The only other thing I'll add with LinkedIn is because it is this professional networking platform, people are on there to sell.
Yeah.
It's a lot more acceptable to be a little bit more kind of like bullish with
Okay.
selling. So,
Yeah.
like, I personally don't pitch really my services just because I believe in like inbound and like self led people approaching
Yeah.
me. But if I'm having a conversation in the DMs and like I'm getting buyer signals, like I'm probably gonna maybe
Be
do like
confident
a
and be like,
soft kind of
yeah.
like, funnel into some sort of a very authentic pitch faster than I would do on Instagram. And
Okay.
that's something because on Instagram, it's like you could be interrupting someone in their personal, like it's
It's
tied to
different.
personal. So you're kind
Yeah.
of just like, you don't want to break that boundary. But with LinkedIn, it's like you're on there for business.
For
Like
a
you're not
reason.
talking
Yeah.
to me for fun. So you can kind of get a little more like bullish, not aggressive, but just more
You're a
bold,
little bit
I
more
think.
bold with like your
Yeah.
pitch. And then do you find too when you're posting like posts, and I know like LinkedIn now has like video capabilities too, are you like similar to Instagram where it's like, if you want more information or like, kind of doing that like hard pitch into, wanting to book a call or wanting to look at, the sales page or things like that? Is that something also that you do and like encourage clients with with TikTok with LinkedIn?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like definitely like hard calls to action within the post. Like you always want to be driving people to something, and something that is really important that I teach very deeply about is the LinkedIn profile. I feel like a lot of people, especially when you're coming from another social media profile, you typically all other bios are a lot more simplistic. Like Instagram, you
Yeah.
don't have as much real estate. So I think it's a combination of like, oh, like I probably don't have to like add that much information because like does it really matter? Versus also like, oh god, okay, this is like a bit of work for a LinkedIn profile. I guess I'll just like do a little bit and get away with it.
Yeah.
But I think that is really the biggest lost opportunity. And that's actually why when I first started my business, my whole service was done for you LinkedIn profile revamp because people didn't understand the importance of profile. So I would
Yeah.
literally get clients who I would do an audit for, and like I would do like a 10-minute audit for, and they got like 5 inbound leads like over 2 weeks because
Wow.
that tweak to their profile. Because again, whenever you're doing anything on LinkedIn, you're driving traffic to your profile, which
Right.
is the same for every other social media platform. But the LinkedIn profile is so comprehensive. There are so
Exactly.
many places where you can position yourself, you can sell, you can like ask people to DM you. So I think really taking advantage of that real estate and turning your profile into a funnel is super,
Mm,
super critical to make sure that when you're doing that hard selling in your content that you're not
yeah.
then falling flat when people go to your profile and they're just like, ooh, like where do I go?
Where
Or
do I
like,
go?
this person doesn't quite look how they looked like in the content. So it's all just like this dance. And if I really kind of had to like put it together in simple terms, LinkedIn is a triangle to me, where the top of the triangle is the LinkedIn profile, the left edge is the network, and the third edge is the content. And I feel like a lot of the time, people like what I see a lot from Instagram users getting on LinkedIn is they only focus on the content, but they
Right.
don't realize how important it is to really create a what I call a purposely positioned profile that attracts your ideal clients and repels everyone
Everyone
else.
else.
And you need to make sure you actually have a relevant network and you're building a community, right? So you can't just
Yeah.
go on there and like spray a bunch of content. You have to actually have these pieces moving together. Yeah.
Ooh, I love that. So one of the things I know, like you've always said on TikTok and on Instagram, is because people on LinkedIn, like it's kind of the place where like the high ticket clients, like the higher caliber clients are. So kind of talk to us a little bit about how you feel like LinkedIn is really superior for these high ticket clients, you know, against, not that you can't sign them on TikTok and Instagram, but I know like those are really where that the people with the deep pockets, like the big ticket clients can really come from.
Totally, yeah. I mean, I think the first thing is that LinkedIn is the kind of like number one business platform, right? So like a lot of businesses, when they're trying to figure out who to work with, or they're trying to vet someone, they're going to go on LinkedIn. Number one, because that's the number one trusted source. That's where they go to look people
Yeah.
up. So while they're looking up their, one vendor, they're looking up their other vendor, right? So they're doing that on LinkedIn. And the second piece of that is that they know they're going to find the person on LinkedIn. If they go looking on Instagram, it's like, I don't know, you might find them, you might not. It's hard to
So true.
tell, right?
Yeah, or their
So I
profile's private or something like that.
yeah, like you can't really just do it's not like your reliable database of businesses, right? Which
Yeah.
LinkedIn is. And I think the other piece is really just like the fact that people are in a mindset to do business on there. Like they're very serious, and that's where people who are ready to spend big money are hanging out day in and day out, right? So that's where
Yeah.
you can go to really like stay top of mind. And I think the third piece is just the simple buying power. Like almost half of LinkedIn users have a salary of over 75,000. Just even the fact that like you can know that about
Yeah.
LinkedIn, that's where I think, again, like not throwing any like shade on Instagram, but I think in 2023 and beyond, as buyers are becoming more skeptical and it's getting
Yeah.
harder and harder to vet people, there is an element of like, anyone can create an Instagram account and pretend to be a business. Like we
For
see
true.
all those bots, like those people
Yeah.
message us and we're just like, we know you're not real.
No.
But with LinkedIn, it's a lot harder to fake a LinkedIn account, because
Mm,
LinkedIn is not something that you like create a new account when you start a new business. It's like, no,
right.
your LinkedIn account is your LinkedIn account. Like this is
That's
your
it.
career timeline. Like if you go and create a new LinkedIn account as a business and you don't have a work history as a human being, I'm not going to trust you, because if I just see like, oh, you just started your business 2 years ago, but I know you look older than 30, it's like, what happened before?
Where were
Why
you?
is that not there?
Yeah.
And so the fact that you have that like information, you can actually vet a lot of the times too, right? I think that is really valuable to serious businesses. So again, B2B, right? Like if you're
Yeah.
doing, or if you're hiring like business, you're working with business owners, like this isn't for like B2C people
Right.
or stuff like that. But I think those are some of the reasons why I think you're able to potentially get higher caliber, higher paying clients on LinkedIn easier.
Yeah, I love this. I feel like LinkedIn is almost becoming like the 2020 version of TikTok, where it's like if you hop on it, you're about to like, ooh, skyrocket. Like that's the sense I'm getting. Even what you were saying, like there's this whole casual side, like people across the board are just genuinely wanting connections, this cold pitch. Maybe like people on LinkedIn can get a little bit more away with it, but we've really seen like the industry as a whole like move away from that. People that and like you said, people are buying into people. It's like cool, you can have all of these services, but like I want to know who like the CEO is, who the face is behind the brand. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there's like a new wave, a new era of LinkedIn, and it feels almost like the women that jump on it now are going to be on this upward trend of generating a lot more freaking money, because I'm getting like this is TikTok in 2020, the people that jumped on like oof, and like let me know if I'm right on
Yeah,
that. That's the
totally,
sense I'm
totally.
getting.
Yeah. And the window is still open. I mean, people who jumped on LinkedIn in 2019, like, holy crap, those people got rewarded like crazy. And I'm so grateful I jumped on 2020 because I got rewarded. But the window is still not closing, just because this whole casual side is
Yeah.
still really new. And there's an interesting thing. I was chatting with one of my girlfriends the other day, actually, and this realization that we had was, even people working in corporate companies, I've worked in there, I've been that person, I worked with those people, even they're freaking tired of the corporate stuff. It's
Yeah.
like no one wants to be corporate anymore. Like the only people who want to do that are maybe like older white male 70-year-old board members who are like
Yeah.
close to retirement. But everyone else on earth just wants to be a human. So I think when we're thinking about like, oh, but like how do I like show up as myself on LinkedIn? Everyone wants it to be corporate. No, they
No,
don't.
they don't.
So,
It's so true.
so the reason why I'm so passionate about the casual side of LinkedIn, because honestly, I think we are saving people by being casual on the platform, especially as business owners, because when you're working under an employer, you don't have as much freedom, unfortunately. Some do when they work at a very kind of forward thinking company, but a
Yeah.
lot of the time, like these corporate people, they can't free themselves out of this corporate jail on LinkedIn and in their companies. So it's almost like we need to help them by
Yeah.
creating this new definition of professional, right? Because
Yeah.
we get to
I
decide what it is. Like professional is no longer going into the office every day. Professional is no longer giving like wearing a tie. The pandemic changed that.
think so
We
much
need
of
to just
that.
trust that like that has also changed LinkedIn, and no one like
Yeah.
wants to talk like a robot. They don't. It's
Yeah.
just the way that like we've had to be, right?
Yeah. I think you like literally nailed, what's that saying? Nailed the head on
Got
the
the
nail.
head, got the head on the hit the
Yeah,
nail on the
hit the
head.
nail on the
Hit the
head.
nail
I
on
was like,
the head.
oh, what are the I'm so bad with remembering like those sayings. I think you hit the nail on the head. But yeah, like the pandemic changed a lot of like what it means to be successful, what it means to and I know a lot of people like the corporate burnout, like people going back into the office, like a lot of people are reevaluating, you know, the workplace. And it's like a lot of people are stepping into entrepreneurship. And we've seen again, you know, even with Instagram, like the perfectly aesthetic Instagram is really starting. And I think TikTok was responsible for really being like, no, 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 like let's just be real human. So I love that this is coming to LinkedIn and this shift is happening. And it's almost like that big permission slip that you just gave to anybody listening. If you fear, ooh, am I going to be too professional? It's like, no, 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 like people want that. Like that's how you're actually going to stand out in this like new wave. It's, and we've all experienced it on LinkedIn where you get the cold pitch, where you get the corporate vibes, where you find a profile and they're just reposting blogs. It's like, cool, like I don't really care. Where if you can come in and just really show like who you are, like the storytelling, like that's really what's going to captivate people. So oh my god, I need to get on LinkedIn now because I'm so excited. Because again, like even for me, like I have a LinkedIn profile that like again it's dusty, like we don't do anything on there, but just how you've explained it, like it doesn't have to be night and day from what we're doing on TikTok and Instagram. It's the same message, it's our same content, it's just, you know, repurposed through the lens of what works best on the platform. And I love that it's really becoming like the more casual side. So I just want to ask you, for any of our listeners listening who are maybe on LinkedIn or are like, okay, Lena, I'm ready to like get started, what would be kind of the first steps that you would kind of suggest for women getting started on LinkedIn or kind of dusting off their profile and being like, I actually want to start leveraging this platform for my business? What would kind of be
Yeah,
like, yeah, initial
absolutely.
steps?
I mean, the first thing I would say, like, give me a follow. I post a lot of content
Yeah,
both on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. I talk all about selling on LinkedIn. You can always see me just kind of out there, you know, doing my thing and sharing a bunch of content. I go live a lot, so that's kind of the first step. Really follow me. And I have a program called the LinkedIn Baddie Program, which is actually exactly for people who are in that place where they're either on LinkedIn and they're kind of feeling like it's really corporate. Maybe they're posting a bit, maybe they're not, but they're kind of like my ideal clients on there. But how do I get on there without, you know, selling my soul to the devil like I
yeah,
did when I worked in corporate? So it's basically a 4-week live group program where I teach you how to drop the corporate vibe in a way that feels authentic to you and basically just get you confident on LinkedIn, building your community of future buyers and engaging as a human being so you can get your clients.
yeah.
And then I do also have like one-on-one containers. So those are some of the ways that you can get involved. I also do have a free masterclass that I just ran that I'm offering as a free resource for you to learn how I use LinkedIn the authentic way to get clients. And I'm actually really excited about that masterclass because one of my friends, Genesis, attended it. And she started posting on LinkedIn literally the day that she attended my masterclass. In the masterclass, she was updating her profile.
Oh my
4 days
god,
in, she booked a discovery call.
stop.
She was just literally repurposing her Instagram content. Like the big shift was just like the permission to be herself. Cause she was like, oh, like my old coworkers are there. They have like certain expectations of me. And I just kind of encouraged her to like own your new identity, you know, like
Yeah,
let's not like I feel like a lot of people they become business owners to do their own thing. But when it comes to now bringing that on LinkedIn, they're scared to really put that final click in to
yeah,
their like this their new identity. And I like it pains me to think that business owners are not leveraging LinkedIn because they think that because they're scared to kind of fully announce to the world that
yeah.
hey, this is who I am now, right? And so I
I love
think
that.
I love empowering people to just shout about who they are from whatever rooftop, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, so that you can actually get clients for your business and build an even bigger impact, right? So
Yeah, I love
masterclass is a good one to kind of get a little bit of a feel of how
feel.
to do LinkedIn the
Yeah.
fun way.
Yeah, I love that. And I honestly think for any of the ladies listening, I'm going to call you out. I hear all the time so many people are frustrated with Instagram. Like, I can't grow as much, like I can't sign as many clients. And it's like just how the industry has moved. Like, Instagram is, yes, you're selling a nurturing platform, but it's like we need to add in that omnipresence. Like, we need to add in an additional platform, whether that's TikTok, whether that's LinkedIn, or both. So for any women that feel like, ooh, Instagram's like cutting me off at the knees here, like, you got to get on these other platforms. So I love how simple and like casual you make LinkedIn, and really just deconstruct in our minds, like, it doesn't need to be this like ick corporate vibe. Like, it can really be super fun. And last question I'll ask before we sign off here, but how much video content do you feel like is useful? Like, I hear this all the time with women, they don't want to get on TikTok because of like filming. So do you feel like it's really important to show face and video content on LinkedIn? Or do you think for women getting started, if maybe TikTok feels a little too daunting with the 3 times posting a day and the video content, like, is something like LinkedIn where they can do more like written post? Or do you think it's good to have a balance?
Yeah, absolutely. So the nice thing about LinkedIn, I mean, I personally love like video all across the board, but the nice thing about LinkedIn is it's still a little bit early days ish for LinkedIn. So you absolutely don't have to post video content on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But the biggest tip that I will give anyone is focus on visuals, whether it's carousels, whether it's pictures of you.
Yeah.
Everyone knows this. Selfies work really well on LinkedIn because, again, people want to see the person behind them. Like, I kid you not, just post a freaking selfie with a story and you'll get so much more engagement.
Right.
So, like, one of my clients, she's working on getting more comfortable with video. We'll get there by the end of
Yeah.
like our 3 months together, but she hasn't posted video content so far, and she got like 3 leads from 3 weeks of working with me, and
Wow.
she's perfectly fine doing her content. I just always get her to do the visual because
Yeah.
visuals are what really break the pattern on LinkedIn right now. So not an issue at all. But I
Love
will say I truly think that video content is
that.
how you really
Yeah.
connect with your audience and make it so that people feel like they already know you before they're buying from you, which is what we always want. But you can totally work your way up that
Yeah.
on
I
LinkedIn.
love that. So that's almost for any of the women who feel, ooh, I know I talk about TikTok all the time on this podcast, but if it's like it feels a little daunting with, the volume, the video content, this is a great other platform that they can add in where it's still the visibility. It's still, again, you can be selling and you can be growing your network and your
Exactly.
community building. And then when, they feel ready to whether add on TikTok or just introduce video. So I feel like for those women that are like, ooh, not yet ready, even though I always push people, this is a really good like next step, because I truly believe, and I know again you're on multiple platforms too, like just being on Instagram, like it's not enough anymore
It's
because of
risky.
how everything's like shifted, of how different platforms are helping us do different things. I know a lot of people talk about Pinterest, but it's like that feels like a whole other world to me, where this feels, and TikTok, not TikTok, sorry, Pinterest, it's like you don't get that connection. It's not the same, where
Yeah.
this feels like a really good step for women that need to add on something on top of TikTok or aren't yet ready. It's like you can still be building your community and funneling people into your programs, into your freebies, into your Instagram. But if you're complaining about Instagram not working for you, like, Miss Ma'am, like, here we go. This is the next step for you. So I
Totally.
love this.
Yeah, yeah. I think just the last one thing that I'll say
Yeah.
that is a huge kind of benefit, and I just heard that actually from like my friend Genesis, who just did the masterclass on got on on LinkedIn, is you're actually not starting from scratch on LinkedIn because you probably have an existing network, which I know also gives people anxiety. And so what I'll say is for Genesis, for example, the discovery call that she booked, it was a previous connection.
Oh, wow.
We're so quick to just discount our LinkedIn network. You
Yeah.
don't know who's in there.
Who's in
Like,
there?
some of your old coworkers might really be excited to hype you up and then they give you visibility, right? Maybe some of them actually want your service. Even if you don't have ideal clients in your existing network, you still have a small network where you could get some minimum engagement. That's a lot easier than starting from scratch on
Yeah.
a TikTok platform with zero, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's probably why I picked LinkedIn, because I was like, oh, I already have a network there. There's some people who can like give me a few likes,
Yeah.
so I don't feel completely useless from the beginning, right? So that's kind of like a little like light
A
push
little
for
nudge.
people.
Yeah,
Like,
and
it's
you're
not it's
also
not too
not
bad.
limited. Yeah, and you're not limited to, like, I know a lot of people when they get on TikTok, and again, like, I love TikTok, but it's like you have to have 1,000 followers before you can have like that link in bio, where with, LinkedIn, it's not like they're limited. You have to have X
Yeah.
number. Like, from the beginning, you have a whole profile. You can build it all out. So that
Hmm.
definitely, me like bashing my favorite platform over here, but I know that's a big thing. It's like you put in like like you said, you're starting from scratch. You got to get to that thousand follower mark before you put in your link in bio. So it can be a little bit slower for channeling people into whether that's your email list, your freebies, your services to your Instagram, where with LinkedIn, it's like use the network you have and like, boom, links already ready to go with a full optimized bio, which Lena's going to help you with because that seems like.
Make sure you stand out.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure you stand out.
Feel like yourself. Make sure that you feel aligned. That's like my big thing. Feel aligned with your LinkedIn profile and you will be able to go very authentically on the platform because you feel comfortable, right? So
I love this. So this was like such a juicy conversation. I feel like even I feel like I'm missing out. So I'm going to leave all of the information for you ladies if you want to obviously connect with her on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on TikTok. If you want to work with her, whether that's in her baddie program or in her private coaching, again, I will leave all of that into the show notes. This is your big fat permission slip, my loves, to lean into omnipresence. If you've been like, Courtney, I don't want to get on TikTok, boom, I gave you another option. Step onto LinkedIn. Lena, I love the LinkedIn Lena.
LinkedIn Lena. It's a good one.
Such a rhyme to it. I love it. Well, I will talk to you on Instagram. I will see you on TikTok, and I will tune in with you next week on the Relatably Rich podcast.